In a previous video about my craps table build, I got a lot of comments and questions about the chip rails, the walls, the layout, and the table. And so I wanted to make this video to see if I could answer most of those for you. So we will be going through this step by step. I'm not going to cover the entire table build because you have the other video for a lot of the, beer rails and the end caps and the lights are kind of covered in that video. So we start with the base, which is this 5-foot folding table that I already had. You can buy them new, but I didn't have to. I already had this one laying around. One of the problems with this table is that if you're trying to play craps on it, it's got a lot of wiggle to it. And so when people are bumping into it and they're rolling the dice, all the chips are going to go everywhere on the table, so I had to figure out some way to make it sturdy. So I decided on this 1¼ wooden dowel. You can get these at Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like that. And so I just had to make some just special cuts on the ends so that way it would fit my table underneath. On this end, I actually cut a little bevel with a slight notch in it there. On the other end, I have a notch that I cut in right here. Now the length you're going to have to cut so it fits your particular table. I made it so it fit from one corner to the other, and then the other side I pry it against the leg. And the groove fits in right along this little piece here. So you may have to make this different for your table based on which table you use. You may not have the same legs or anything else. But once that's in place, it sturdies it up pretty well. And now that I'm actually doing this, I'm getting a little hot, so I've got to change my shirt. Okay, that feels better. I need to cover it up, and I decided to see what was on the market, and I got this little spandex cover. So it's pretty simple, it just goes right over, and you can get this on Amazon. And so that gives us a nice solid base to put everything on. The next phase was the board itself, the layout, the tabletop. That's where this came into play. I found this online. Actually, I think I saw a YouTube video of it or something. There's this company called crapstable.com. I'll put a link to them below in the description. I needed a small enough table that was big enough to support 8 players. But I didn't need numbers on each end of the table because most of the time there's going to be one person running the table, so you didn't want to have to work both ends. So when I found this one, it turned out to be the right fit for me. Now, it's got a neoprene, it's pretty thick, seems pretty durable, and so this is what I ended up starting with. The thing is I knew that I was going to need extra space around the edges to put all of the chips and all the dice and the markers and the stick and everything like that. And I wanted to have a little room for people to actually be able to pick up the dice. So I knew I was going to make it bigger than this mat, and so I had to actually make something for this to fit into. So I ended up making this. Now, all this is just a thin piece of plywood, probably 1/4 inch. Then about 1/4 inch. I can't remember now, it's already been wrapped. But it's about 1/4 inch. Then I put a thin strip of probably 1/8 inch around the edges. And then I covered it with a black felt so it hopefully matches much as the layout itself. So now when it's all put together, the mat sits right down in there, and I have the extra space around the edges. I wanted the extra space also in the corners to actually hold up the table sides. I wanted to make this as portable as possible, so I did not want to have a large tabletop that would not fit in a car or somebody's trunk or something of that nature. So I made it this way so that the rails, the sides and the rails would sit on top of this, which is then supported by the table underneath. I'll get to it in a little bit on how I built it to kind of also stay on top of the tabletop. But so this was the design for the layout. I got it, it's pretty good. There's not going to be a whole lot of, complaining about this little lip on the edge that may affect the dice, because most of the time the dice actually either bounce over it or miss it altogether. And this is not a full-length table, so any of those professionals or picky people out there saying that they want to practice their throwing for when they go to the casino, this table is not it. This is just a recreational table for us to have fun. Instead of playing poker, we can play craps. And basically they both take about the same amount of space. But after building this, I did notice that there was one thing that I do like about some of the craps tables I've played at, or at least I like them for people who are not all into craps game as I am. There was this bonus craps across the top. It's kind of fun. It's a cheap little bet that basically it helps the table start rooting for each other a little bit more. The bonus was actually kind of fun, and I wanted to add that to this. So I looked around for a mat or a layout that actually had that on it, and I couldn't find one. So then what I decided to do is I decided to design my own. So I designed my own, found a place, I think it's actually in Vegas, but I'll put the link to it below in the description. They printed up for me. There are certain things that are copyrighted that they will not print, so you can't just steal someone else's layout. Like there's a 3-card poker game where you can't call it 3-card poker. It has to be called something else. Some of the bets on there is called prime. You can't use the word prime, things of that nature. So the bonus actually is a copyrighted term that can only, you basically have to lease it from the company if you want to put it on your layouts. So I decided to change things around. I went back and forth with the design, trying to change it around enough to where I didn't break any copyrights, and it also fit in this same general area. Also too, with my own design, I could make the layout a little bit bigger to take up a little bit more of the space, because the chips are up on the rails. Just need a place to be able to collect winnings and to place the winnings when you pay them out. So this is what I designed. So the first thing you may notice that it doesn't look much different than the one I got from crapsmat.com. I did, however, change where the tick marks are on the bedding, simply because it's easier to do everything from a one-person dealer standpoint. The first spot here obviously belongs to the person directly to the left, and it goes on around to where this person is right there, just to the left of the center line. Then to the right of the center line goes around to the person directly on the right. So this way it's easier to keep up with the bets, especially if there's going to be a lot of drinking involved, which that's 99.9, yes, 100% of the time. So I also wanted to put on here about the odds. I wanted to be able to teach some of my neighbors and friends and everything else about how to play the odds. There was another part of the old field where it didn't have pays double on the 2 and the 12. Up here in the top is where I actually put the bonus. So basically I have the rules here for the bonus. I have the place marks for the markers, the placeholders for the markers, and then basically I put a logo on here for our tiki bar that we actually have in the backyard. So this was the design we're going to. I think it'll eventually take care of the whole lip around the edge. I've got some extra layers of felt that I'm going to put on the base, and then I'm going to stretch this across it so it'll be permanently attached. But this is going to be where I'm going to with this particular setup. And so, but let's get back to how it is today. So the next layer is the sides. And so with that, I just use regular wood. So this is one of the end pieces. With it, I used regular 1x12. It turned out that based on the height of the table and where I wanted the rails, a normal 1x12 board turned out to be the right height. What I did is I used this 2x2 as my supports in the corners. And if you notice, I made it a little bit, it's flush on one side and short on the other. This is so it overhangs the edge of the tabletop. I did it on both sides. And then I tried different forms of connecting in the corner. My first design was to use 3 threaded inserts in the sides to connect each corner together. I did this so it would have enough strength. And later, when I got to doing the rails, I noticed that I didn't necessarily need that stability towards the top because I built the rails to actually hold the top edge in place. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So I ended up drilling out the inserts and putting these dowels in place. And so that just helps keep everything in line. And I have one threaded insert that will actually use to tie it together. Now, so I wouldn't have to take a wrench with me everywhere I went, I ended up getting these thumb screws that would actually fit into these threaded corners. The longer sides were a lot easier. I just needed to have the 3 holes for the dowels and the threaded screw to go through. And I used the same 1x12. I ended up wrapping the inside with felt so that because this was going to be seen. The ends were going to get covered up by the diamond backing that will be for the dice to bounce off of. But on the sides, this was going to be seen, so I wrapped it in felt that matched the actual ones that I used on the table. To make things easy to set up, I labeled my pieces, put A here so that I know that these 2 corners go together. I have a D, so that's the B on the other end down here, then C would be there, and all the way around the table. So to set this up, we just slide these wooden dowels into these holes. We take one of the nuts and thread it through the threaded insert on the bottom. It doesn't have to be tight, just snug. Now the top still comes apart a little bit, but that's okay for right now until we get the rails on. And then at this point, you just slide it around slowly and you drop the ends down onto the table. Now the difference between that side and this side, obviously, is I have a dip down here so that way the dealer can work with the chips. So all I did was notch it down to what I thought was a proper distance and a good size. It's nothing in particular. I also added some 12-volt power to the side so people could charge their phones, and I could actually control some LED lights that I'm going to put under that I put under the rails. The entire table runs off of a regular 12-volt plug that I plug in on the other side here. There's nothing special about this. Just look up online, got some 12-volt wires, some particular ends, got connectors that fit. Just basically got everything on Amazon. And this is the piece that I think I got the most questions about. The chip rails. So it's hard to walk through how I built this now that it's all put together and sanded and painted. But basically, I cut out the shape that I wanted out of a 1/2-inch piece of plywood. So that became the base for the rail. Now to make the chip rails, it was really expensive to buy the pre-made ones, and I knew that I wanted 4 places, 4 stations on each side, and each one of these makes up half the table. So I'll have a grand total of 8 places for players to stand. So what I decided to use is I went out to Home Depot and I bought basically some cove trim, but I took 4 pieces to make 2 channels. And so this is 3/4 inch board that I cut to fill in around them after I laid them in place. But on the original 1/2 inch plywood, I laid out where I wanted to have my chip stations. And I took a set of chips with the 2 pieces of the cove trim floating around on the table, put them to where the chip itself would rest on the bottom, but it fit nicely in the curve, and I drew a pencil line where those 2 pieces needed to be. Then I did the same thing for the next one. I butted this one up against the back of that one, and I set the distance of this one away from it. Once I got those laid out with a pencil where I wanted them, I glued them and tacked them in place. I did that all the way around the table. From that point, these are actually 3/4 inch tall, so I used 3/4 inch board, cut it in different sizes to fill in the spaces around all the chip trays. That ends up giving me 1.25 inch thickness of the entire rail. I knew I did not want to put any padding on this because it just seemed like it wasn't necessary. So I made sure that the edges were nice and smooth. Now on the underside, I didn't have to sand it nearly as much because it was not going to be exposed to anybody touching it very much. I put this, I guess, 1 inch piece of board, so that way it resides just outside the edge of this wall, so it'll keep the top from pulling away from itself. So this channel goes all the way around, and it basically snugs the top together. So that's when I decided that I did not need to have the bolts for the top. I just needed the dowels to keep this from moving in and out this direction. As far as going in and out this direction, it's going to be fine because it's sandwiched between the 2 pieces. Now there were a few things that I eventually added to this. Obviously I added LCD lights underneath. And over on this side over here, after I wired them all together, I terminated it with a 1/8 inch pin plug. This matches up with the 1/8 inch pin supply here. This is the male version, this is the female version. We'll be coming back to these latches in a minute, but I added these later and I'll explain why. So to get this in place, it simply fits over and it pinches the sides in and it goes all the way up against it that way. Now I noticed after we played with it the first few times that if you lean too much on this edge, it would lift up here. So when people had their arms and they were throwing, it would toss chips everywhere, which obviously is not a good idea. So those latches that I showed you a minute ago, they are under here in the center. Now these latches can slide in into the holes that are in the wall to keep it from lifting up. So now they stay down. In the corners, I connect the 12 volt DC, male, female. So I connect the 12 volt DC, male, female connections. I have one for each side. And from here, the other video shows the installation of the backing for the dice throw, goes on each end. I have a piece of foam. It's more of a conduit cover rather than, say, a pool noodle that I got from like the Home Depot. Also, you saw in the other video where I have a beer shelf that I built around the outside edge. And I just kept adding to it little bit by little bit until I kind of got everything in it that I needed. Hopefully this has been helpful to some of you. There's not much more detail I can go into without completely redoing it and making it all over again. Hopefully people who are watching this will venture into making their own and be able to post some more detailed clips on how they put together their chip rails. Again, this is just one example of many that you can find out there, and this works really well for me. Thank you for watching and have a good day.